Okay, so now we have gathered all of our information and we are back for the really fun stuff, which is setting up our Dotloop, filling out our contract. So you're going to want to go to dotloop.com. If you are one of our agents, you should have been furnished with a login. So you're going to come right up here, sign in. I'm going to sign in as Deb. I'm going to make this loop as her, but obviously you will sign in as yourself. This is my list of loops, but I am going to create a new one based on the listing contract that we're going to write. So I'm going to click right here to create the loop. I like us to all name our loops according to basically the same format. So I'm going to type the address. It's going to try to auto-populate for me, but I'm just going to muscle through here and type in the whole address, including the zip code, and then I'm going to put the client's last name. And I'm going to add a 2 to that because I actually made a demo loop for myself earlier, and I want this to be distinguished from that loop. It's a different one. So create loop. Ta-da! Here we have 6015 Bonnet Avenue for Willis. Okay, it's important as you're going through the dot loop to kind of put as much information in here as you can. You want to start with these things up here. Transaction type. This is a listing for sale. My loop status, it's a pre-listing. When we go active, we'll change it to active listing. When we get an offer, it'll be under contract. At some point, it will be sold. Once we're finished with it, we'll archive it. It never goes away. Keep in mind, anything you put in a loop, it's basically there forever. Any loop you create, it's there forever. You really can't delete them. There's kind of a trick to delete a document, but I'll call that like, that'll be advanced Dotloop karate, and we'll teach you that later. Okay, so the first thing that I like to do is add my people to the Dotloop. Now, in this case, I've got Deborah Kent, and she's already in here. That sort of automatically came up because I logged in as Deborah Kent. You're always going to have the admin for Deb Kent Gallery of Homes, and that will be that's me or Deb, who may at any point come in and review your loops, and will certainly review them at the end of the transaction before your commission is paid out. So for Deb in this case, who is, again, I'm acting as Deb, I'm going to say I'm the listing agent. I want to make sure that I put that role in there. I am going to add my seller, and I'm going to deliberately, I'm going to add that 2 to my name to kind of, I have an identity on Dotloop. I don't want to confuse anything by creating another one. So this is Jamie Willis, the not actual Jamie Willis. So just pretend like I'm a separate person. So I'm going to also mess up my email address, so that won't actually be correct either. So no emails, I just added an extra S in there. Okay, I'm going to put this person's role in here. This is the seller. If you have more than one seller, add them. As you go through the transaction, you'll be able to add, as you flip this down and look at the roles, you can add escrow people from your title company to the loop. You can add a loan officer. You can add, certainly put in a name for a buyer, because the more information you give, the more things auto-populate for you, and the easier your life is down the road. So now I've added Jamie Willis 2, my seller. Deb Kent is the listing agent, and I'm also going to add Jamie Willis, the real me, and my role is the managing broker. And you want to go ahead and add me to any listing loop that you do, because there are certain documents I have to sign, so it's just convenient if I'm in there. Okay. Now that we've got that, what we want to do is go back up here to the top. We want to go into view details, and this is where we're going to really add a lot of information. So you see we've already got our people here. We're going to go down, we're going to put the property address in. And if we're lucky, this will actually want to auto-populate for us as well, and we're okay with that. So we'll click the right one, and you see it fills in your street number, everything. We're going to add the county. One thing that you're going to need for your listing contract that Dotloop as yet doesn't have a field for is your township. So in this case, it's Warren Township, and that's something that you can find also in the realist tax thing that we were looking at earlier. And note that I have this open right now, and I have the WUFU open because there's information in both of these places here that I'm going to need. You know, we gathered that in the last video, and we're going to use it in this one. Okay, so we don't have an MLS number yet because we don't have a live listing, but we can add that later. Now, this next section here for financials, this really more refers to, you know, someone's offered price or the sale price. This is kind of assuming that you're under contract already. We can, if we want to, go ahead and type in the commission rate. We're going to split 3% with the buyer's side. We don't have to fill in really anything else here. We don't know what the earnest money amount is that hasn't come in yet. We don't have an offer. You know, same thing here. We don't have a contract agreement date. We don't have a closing date. No offer dates, no inspection date. So some of this we're just kind of scrolling through until we get down to stuff that we actually do need. And here's our listing information. Now, I'm going to refer back for my listing date part here to find out when the client meant to go live. Okay, this one wanted to go live November 10th, so that happens to be our actual date today, so I'm going to use November 10th as our listing date. Now, note that on a listing contract, there is a date of the contract, and that's going to, we'll look at that when we actually open the contract. There is another place on there, which is this, actually. This is the date that you mean to go live on the MLS. Those dates don't have to be the same. And, you know, as you go along, if you put this as your listing date and then you discover actually you're not ready to go live for another week, then you can either change your contract, get it signed again. You can do an amendment to your listing contract. You know, you do want to keep track of those dates, but again, the date of your contract, which is the date that kind of shows up right at the top, and again, we'll go over this when we have the contract in front of us, and the listing date where you go live, those don't have to be the same date. Our expiration date, our typical term for a listing, we usually do 6 months out, so I'm going to go February, March, April, May. Okay, so I'm going to go to May 10th, 2017. That's 6 months from now. You always have the option, as you're working with a client, you can have a shorter or a longer contract, whatever's agreeable to you and your client. Our list price, we're pulling out of the listing questionnaire again. So we started at $250,000. And again, hopefully this is a conversation that you have had with your client and you've kind of come to this price together. Some clients are really firm. They know what they want to list for, and they're confident in it, and we're obedient, and so we use that. I may have mentioned in the last video, sometimes you get a listing questionnaire and that's blank because they just don't even know. So you definitely want to make sure that everybody's on the same page with the price. So these are the three most important fields you kind of want to fill out here. The dates, the original price. You don't really need to fill in the mortgage balances. Now they have provided that and you've got it. And if this is a good place for you that you want to be keeping that information, go ahead and fill out as much of this as you want for our purposes and to kind of get through this a little more quickly. I'm not going to fill out all of this, but just keep in mind that this is a good place to keep a lot of information. For example, as you're adding people to your loop, I actually can go in here and put contact information. I can put a phone number for my buyer. I can put their current address, cell phone and marital status. You know, there's a good bit of information I can collect here, and this is, you know, as I said, pretty much whatever you put in here, it's accessible forever. So, you know, this might be a good place for you just to gather your information and store it. Okay, so back here on the listing information, we got the dates, we have the price. I am going to, and keep in mind that most of what we put in here, if the contract the contract template that we use calls for it, it'll auto-populate from here, so I only have to type it once. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and type what the property includes, which is, you know, the personal property included with the sale. I'm not going to type all of it because, again, I don't want to take all day here. So refrigerator, washer, and dryer. I just want you to see how it works. And since this isn't a real contract, it doesn't have to. My seller here has said that they would like to exclude their donkeys from the sale, so I'm going to put that there. All right, geographic description, and again, you can put this stuff in here. This particular field is not going to auto-populate. We happen to be in Warren Township 4905. Here's the old listing. So, sometimes if you don't have these things memorized, this is another good reason to have an old listing to refer back to. So it's in 4905. Now, a thing that will auto-populate is the legal description, and in some cases, those are really long and tedious to type, like this one, for example. Check out that legal description. I don't want to type that. I'm not even sure I could get it right. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to paste that right in there. And then that's going to auto-populate for me when we get our contract open. We can put the lot number in here too if I want. And again, these things are just for, a lot of these fields are just for your reference. You can go in here. I can put the year it was built, the number of bedrooms, the square footage, the bathrooms. Again, I can add a lot of information if I just want to have it to refer to later. So once you're finished there, you're going to save that. Okay? And then we are going to go up here and we're going to say go back to loop. Okay, so now our loop has a lot of information and we are ready to add our documents. There are a couple of different ways to add documents. You can browse and that will take you to your wherever you have documents saved. You can choose a file and upload it that way. You can email yourself a document. So when you check that box, you get a link here to copy to a clipboard. So I copy that. Now I happen to have in my email the net sheet that we made in the last video, and it's important to have that in my loop. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. So here I am, I've got my file with that attached. I'm just going to hit forward. I'm going to paste that Dotloop address, and I'm going to hit send. Then I'm not going to worry about that for a few minutes because it's going to show up in my loop. It's not instant, but it does happen pretty quickly. But in the meantime, there are certain documents that I need for my listing, and we have access to templates for those. Now, when we go to templates, we've got a bunch of different choices down the side here. These are DLC documents, and a lot of the same stuff under IAR residential documents. Now these things, you can populate them. Some of them will auto-populate with the fields that we filled out in Dotloop, and in fact many of them will. If you try to access these, you may be asked for your NAR number, and it's just a process that you go to kind of give yourself access to these forms. This is where you'll get forms that we don't use very often, because the ones that we do use, we've put into folders here and we've customized them for our brokerage. So in this case, we're going to go here into the residential listing packet. These are the Deb Kent Gallery of Homes documents. And we will, as these documents are updated, which our association does, I think maybe even on a yearly basis, we will update our templates as well. Now, you don't need everything that's in here. If you have, for example, if you're working on a short sale, grab that short sale addendum. If you're not, you don't need it. If the house is post-1978, don't get a lead-based paint disclosure. But for the most part, what you are going to need, not the addendum, not the exempt listing. If we're going to stage the house, or if you think we might stage the house, grab this addendum to listing contract, staging contract. This has some language that protects us as we are moving furniture in and out of houses and we're doing staging. We need the Deb Kent Gallery of Homes office policy, always. We always need the listing contract. We always need a seller's disclosure, except in the handful of cases where it's a bank-owned property, where you're selling from one family member to another, where I think if it's an estate, you don't need one. There are a couple of situations which you should have gone over in realtors class, and if you didn't, we have these things. We have a list of situations where you don't need one, but most of the time, the vast majority of the time, you need a seller's disclosure. And if you have a house built before 1978, regardless of what type of sale it is, even if it's a FSBO, whether it's an estate, bank-owned, whatever, you always have to have the lead-based paint disclosure. So you've got these 5 documents that you're going to most of the time use, and you are most of the time not going to use the other ones in here. So once you check the ones that you need, you just hit copy. Okay. And here they are in my folder. I'm going to refresh this page just to see if here's my net sheet. Just going to click into that to show you, yes, that's the net sheet that I showed you before. Now, I don't really like the name of that file. So kind of a cool thing you can do, where these little 3 dots here on the side of things, you can click that and it'll give you a menu, and one of the things that you can do is rename it. So I'm going to call that, rather than quick print, I like to call it a net sheet. And since that's what I call it, I don't want to confuse my clients by having, I'll say I sent you a net sheet and then they can't find it because all they see is this quick print. Okay, now we're going to quickly go into all of these documents and get them set up for the seller to sign or initial or whatever they need to do. So this part actually, we're kind of done with the hard part, but we do need to go into each one of these. So here's our net sheet. This doesn't obligate our people to anything, but I like for them to sign it so that I know that they saw it, because it's important that they know, okay, we're going to sell your house for $250,000, ish. This is going to cost you $18,000. If they aren't really thinking about that, that can come as a shock to them at closing. So you don't want anybody shocked ever. So what I did here was I added a signature field. I went to add signature, and then now I need to assign it. So I'm going to assign this to not Jamie Willis, managing broker, but Jamie Willis 2, which is what we're designating as the seller. So then I save it. I'm not going to share it right now, because what I'm going to do is share all of this in one fell swoop. Okay? So in this case, just save it, get out of it. And that's what we're going to do with all of these documents. We could save and share, and then we get our seller is getting 6 different emails, and we want them to have one email, and they can just do it all at once. Going into the lead-based paint disclosure. Now see, it's giving me the option to autofill, because this is one of the ones we've set up. It's got our address for us. It knows who our seller is. So I'm going to say, yeah, by all means, autofill. Now, there are only a couple of things we need to do here. We need to either disclose that we know about lead-based paint or that we don't. So I'm going to refer back here to our listing questionnaire. This seller is not aware of lead-based paint, and this is what you're going to see most of the time. So we're saying seller has no knowledge, seller has no reports. If they do have knowledge, they do have reports, then we check the other boxes. While you're on this page as the listing agent, you've got to sign this. So you might as well go ahead and sign it while you're here. Scroll on down. The only thing you need to do on the second page, you sign. There's a space for your seller to sign. Save that. Get out of it. Okay? And I'm just moving straight up here. No particular order these have to be done in. Again, we're going to auto-populate. The only thing we're going to do on this page is I just put the date in. And then I leave it alone, because these are already assigned to the roles. So this is assigned to the seller. And don't, under any circumstances, fill out one of these for a seller. The liability is just not worth it. You want them to fill this out themselves. You're perfectly welcome if they feel like they need help, they have questions, to kind of talk them through it, but just make sure that they are filling it out themselves, assuming that they're physically able to do so. So again, we're going to save that and pop out of it. Then go into the listing contract now. So this one got a little bit more to it than the others, so it's not going to be quite as quick, but you'll see that the things that we typed here's what the property includes. We've got our dates in here, a legal description, all of that stuff. You can view it here if you want to. I can add, for example, if I wanted to, I could add Deb's license number, which actually I know it, so I'm going to do that. Oh, well, I knew it a minute ago. Sorry, I'm very tired and have been at it all day, so I'm going to actually just let this autofill, and maybe I'll remember what her license number is when we get there. Okay, so now you see all these yellow fields. These are things that have auto-populated for me. So I'm going to go and run through the listing contract. I'm going to put today's date in this spot. Now, this is not the listing date. This is the date of today. In this case, they happen to be the same. Okay, everything is auto-populated here, except as I mentioned, it never auto-populates the township. For some reason, Dotloop doesn't know about that, so you have to fill that in. Okay, here's my list price. You're going to just, make sure things are accurate as you go. Possession, I almost invariably write negotiable in here, even if the house is vacant. I always like to give my people as much leeway as possible. Go look on here. Did they say they're up to date on their payments? Yes, they are not delinquent. Did they acquire this at a tax sale? And no, they did not. And then, you also have to say whether they're a foreign person or a foreign entity. If you check yes, that they are a foreign person, meaning that they're not a citizen or their company is not operating as an American company, then they will be subject to the Foreign Investment and Real Property Tax Act. In this case, they're not. Now, this area here, you're saying what types of financing would be acceptable. And in most cases, you're going to check conventional mortgage, insured conventional mortgage, FHA, and VA. In certain cases, if the house is in really bad shape and you're pretty sure it's not going to get through an FHA or a VA appraisal, then you might want to consider cash only as an option. Or if they're looking for a land contract or something, you can write things in there. Okay, next part is got what you're excluding. See, it auto-populated my donkeys, and what I'm including, it populated the few items I had listed there. Putting in the contract that if the contract expires or we terminate it and they are not listed with another agent, because once they list with another agent, this whole section here is void, and a buyer who saw the house due to our efforts ends up purchasing the house within 180 days of our contract expiring, then we are due a commission. We have in here that if for some reason we didn't get paid the commission, we're going to charge 10% interest. That doesn't ever happen. You're going to a closing, you are going to get a commission. The reason I put the number 10 in there, it's just random for me. I don't actually even know what other brokers use. I didn't want anybody to be confused and think that this is the commission rate. So I didn't want to put 3% in there or anything where they're like, oh, woohoo, it's a really low commission. So if they're going to question that number, I want it to be because it's too high and they're like, hey. At any rate, we go down to the next page, and here's where our commission rate is. So we've got 7%. I'm putting not applicable in a couple of these things. I don't really want to do an option. We're not selling options to purchase. I'm not really interested in this case in helping the seller lease the property. If I thought that was an option, then I would put a number of some sort in there. I might ask for 3% or 2% compensation for doing those things. In a lot of these areas, I'm just sticking NA in there just to fill in the lines. It's considered a good practice just to kind of have things filled out. A lot of this stuff is boilerplate language. You don't really need to worry about it. At some point, this page will presumably load. There we go. All right. Now, here's where we're going to fill in their utility information, which they gave us here. This would enable us, having this listing contract signed, to obtain information if we wanted to from the utility companies, from their HOA, or from their mortgage lender. Now, we don't have an HOA, so I am making this also not applicable. I'm going to put their lending institution in here. So it's Chase. I don't want to type this fictitious number that I made up, so I'm going to paste that in there. Now, if this was a real, it's defying me. Okay, so I'll have to type this number, 42888, which again is a fake number. So this would give me the authority, presumably, to request the seller's payoff, but I leave that to the title companies and don't typically do that, but I guess if I ever needed to, then I would have been given the authorization to do so. I'm going to check this box here that says that the seller does authorize us to disclose the existence of written offers to buyers, so that if we have received an offer and another agent calls us and says, hey, we're thinking about submitting an offer, do you have one? Then I can disclose that. And there's also some other language in here saying what we have to disclose, which is if we're asked, If the other offer is from somebody in our firm, we have to disclose that. We don't have to disclose who actually made the offer. We certainly are not obligated to give any description of the particulars of the offer. Okay, we are authorized to put a lockbox on the door, and the seller is, and these are things that are automatically checked here. You can change them. If you have a seller who's like, I don't want a lockbox because I want you to be at every showing and let in every person who ever wants to see it, you know, then obviously, again, we're obedient. But the vast majority of the time, we are going to put on a lockbox. And furthermore, if somebody is like really dying to see the house and they're really excited and they think maybe they're going to make an offer, but we can't reach the seller to get permission, the seller authorizes us to allow a buyer to have, you know, obviously with their broker, to have access to the property. Okay, if the seller happened to have a real estate license, we would put in their license number there. Then we've got a little bit of boilerplate language here of our own that basically is allowing us to do our staging. We're asking the seller to give us permission to advertise their property on Facebook, Craigslist, etc. And we are stipulating that any photographs or marketing materials belong to us, so that at some point, if the listing ends, if we're not under contract anymore, they can't give those materials to another agent. They belong to us. They're our proprietary things. And I did remember Deb's license number. So you want to have that filled out. Our brokerage license is already auto-populated. Obviously, you don't want to put Deb's license number in here. You want your own. And this the managing broker must sign, which is me. So these get shared with me and I'll sign them. And the seller has to sign. So that is the 4 pages of the listing contract. And again, we're just going to save it. I'm going to bump out of it. Okay, our office policy. This is an internal document, but we are required to provide it. This describes our duties as a buyer's agent or as a seller's agent, and also discusses limited agency and what that's about. And again, we're required to get a signature for every client buying or selling on this. So I always date that for today's date. I put the name of the agent in. The agent doesn't technically have to sign it, but you do identify which agent it is. I'm going to assign the signature field to the seller. And I'm actually going to get rid of that signature field just because sometimes it ends up somebody signs twice, which there's no problem with that, but I just don't like it. So save that. And if you had 2 sellers, obviously you would have assigned the second field to the second seller. Bump out of that. One more document. Okay, here's our addendum to our listing document. This is going to auto-populate a bunch of stuff again. And since I put Deb's license number in the last one, it now knows it, so it's going to auto-populate that for me too, which is great. It gave me a warning about changing people's roles. I'm actually not. I don't know why that comes up, because we're not changing anything. Okay, so this is an addendum to the listing contract, which again, it's basically a hold harmless. And the gist of it is that we will be very careful not to damage your property, but you do give us permission to come into your house with our staging stuff. You will take good care of our staging stuff, and basically, like I said, it's hold harmless and protection for us, since we're going in and doing a lot of stuff. So you want the date here to match the date on the listing contract, not the active date, but the date that was at the top of the listing contract, which again in this case is today. And again, the managing broker signs, seller signs. So we just save, we bump out. So now we have 6 documents that we need our seller to sign. Now, what we're going to do is share these with the seller, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But first, I'm going to open up a little document that I would be happy to share with you. I have this saved on my hard drive, and this is basically a letter to the seller, and it's explaining, here's what I have that I'm going to share with you. This is what these things are about. Please feel free to read through this at your leisure. Again, I'll email it to you, but it's basically saying, here are the 6 documents. This is what they all are, and we're looking forward to getting your house sold. So I am going to copy that, and I'm going to go in here. I'm going to check everything that I want to share. Now, if I had something in here that I didn't want to share, I just don't check it. I click share, and then I'm seeing who I'm sharing it with. I'm seeing my name twice here because, again, once I'm the seller and once I'm the managing broker. So that's who I'm sharing with. And you can see that both of these people have permission to sign because we need the seller to sign everything. We need the managing broker to sign 2 documents. I'm going to enter a custom message here. So this will be an email that goes with that. So this is what I've just copied. I'm going to paste it in there. And then I'm going to attach. I'm going to click this box, and this is important, attach PDF to email. The reason for this is that it can be difficult sometimes when you link through from the email that you get. I have had certain sellers that found it difficult to review the documents because of the flashing bar that says sign now. So, if we attach it to a PDF, they can print it out, they can look through it, they can read it, and then when they're ready to sign, then they just click through. So once you've done that, you just click share. And then you click done, and make sure that you keep doing this until you have clicked done. All right, now I will show you what the seller is going to see. They're going to get an email from you, and it's going to say, action needed, Deborah needs you to sign 6 documents. Now, you remember I gave the wrong email, like a fake email for me as a seller, but for me as a managing broker who has to sign things, I'm getting the same email. So here's what I had pasted, and here's what happens. So I have all of this attached. I have all these that I can review if I want, but I'm going to show you what happens when you click back through to the Dotloop. So it's going to take your seller to the site. They could scroll through and review everything, but you see this bar kind of goes with you that says start signing, and like I said, some people find that distracting. But when they're ready to sign, they click start signing, and it will take them directly to the places where they have to sign. This will pop up. I can either adopt that kind of brush script signature. I could draw a signature if I want to, although actually it doesn't seem to be letting me, so I'm just going to use this one. So I adopt and sign, so that now is my signature. I sign that. I click finish signing, and I don't bounce out yet. I wait until I get this where it asks me to sign in. Now, if I'm the seller, I won't have a membership yet. I can sign up. If I sign up, what that will do for me is it will allow me to go back to the Dotloop later and print things out. I can look through any document that's been shared with me. But I don't have to have a membership. A seller does not have to have a membership to go in repeatedly and sign whatever you send for them to sign. So that's it. We are done. So if that had been to a real seller, then as soon as they get all that signed, then you're ready to actually take the listing live on the MLS, assuming that you've done your staging, you've got your photos, you're good to go. So. And we will go over that in a different training video. But in the meantime, now you know how to gather all the information and what to do with it. So good luck and Godspeed.